evening. Maybe you opened your laptop to check your email. When last time? Only this time, something is wrong. It's slow. Files won't open. You're getting error messages like unknown file types on your Windows machine, or if you're a Mac user, no associated application. Or maybe you're already completely locked out. Then the phone rings. It's your IT team, and you hear the words you are hoping and praying to the IT gods never to hear. We've been breached. You look back down at your computer and there it is, your worst nightmare come true. The ransom demand black and white and usually red screen. You've been infected with ransomware. Welcome to the presentation of cloud ransomware. In this presentation, the first item is what is a cloud ransomware. Then I'll talk about what are the different types of cloud ransomware attacks and how you can recover from a cloud ransomware attack. Then I'll also discuss the trends that are happening in the cloud ransomware. Then I'll move on to discuss what is a ransomware kill chain. And then the most important, the possibilities of preventing a ransomware attack in the cloud. And then I'll wrap up with any questions. Malicious software called malware attacks have matured from being annoying to causing business process disruption and even data destruction. A type of malware that is growing in popularity is ransomware. Ransomware gets its name from its behavior. Ransomware encrypts critical files on a victim's computer and demands a ransom be paid for the decryption key. The attacker doesn't actually destroy any data, but makes that data unavailable to the victim until the ransom is paid. Hi, I'm Leena Bongale, Manager of Data Analytics and Governance at TD Bank. I hope you're all really well, and thank you for joining my presentation on cloud ransomware. Ransomware works by infiltrating a user's PC or mobile device via malicious software that is usually installed unintentionally after clicking a link in an email that's posed as something else. Once installed, the software uses cryptography to prevent users from accessing their files and demands a sum of money to unencrypt the data. Until recently, ransomware was mostly an issue on local computers and mobile devices. However, the most recent wave of ransomware attacks is infiltrating the cloud apps. This introduces a new and more serious threat for modern businesses, especially those that rush to the cloud to enable remote workers without taking proper security precautions. All ransomware is a malicious software or a malware. It is a process that infects systems and devices. Ransomware is typically deployed with the intention to block the access of legitimate owners to their own data, applications, and environments. Once a system is infected by ransomware, the malicious process starts encrypting files. Then the system owners receive a message demanding ransom payments. If the ransom demands are not met, the data remains encrypted and owners cannot continue using their information. A ransomware process might try to gain access to more systems, spreading across a greater scope within the network. Ransomware can cause major damage when infecting cloud environments, which are often built for easy access and usage. Is data stored in Google and Microsoft safe? The short answer is that ransomware in the cloud is a big problem, and your data will only be safe if your district takes steps to protect it. The days of depending on firewall, web content filters, and/or cyber insurance are long gone. The cloud apps you use, such as Google and Microsoft, hold a large amount of sensitive information in Google Drive, SharePoint, OneDrive, and cloud emails and chat applications. Those applications are built to be easy to access and use, but they also make them simpler for hackers to breach. It is easy to believe that your data is safe because Google and/or Microsoft are going to protect it. Many people make this mistake, but that's really not the case. Your agreement with Google and Microsoft use something called a shared responsibility model. In general, the shared responsibility model states that the vendor is responsible for their infrastructure and platform security. they must maintain reasonable security measures to protect their servers that run the cloud apps their customers use. You, the customer, are responsible for protecting your services, which include your cloud applications and the data stored in them. You are responsible for using proper access, configurations, cloud monitoring to detect anomalies and then remediate any issues that arise. Your cloud vendors may provide tools to help you secure those services, but they aren't liable if a hacker gains access to your data using a phishing email or a third-party app intrusion, for example. Ransomware in the cloud can cause major damage. For example, let's say that someone in your organization clicks on a link in an email. That click will trigger a program that starts to encrypt all the emails in the person's account. As intended during normal operation, those encrypted files are synced with the files in the cloud storage, and the encryption program jumps to other accounts. The next thing you know, ransom demands start appearing on monitors everywhere. Schools are using more cloud applications than ever before. This was a trend that started well before the pandemic led to a widespread remote learning. COVID-19 merely supercharged cloud adoption. To keep student data and the organization's data safe, IT leaders and IT teams need to start thinking about cloud security as one of their cybersecurity essentials. The idea that your cyber insurance is going to have you completely covered if an incident occurs is just one of the many cybersecurity myths that is simply not helpful. Adopting models like Zero Trust Cybersecurity and a K-12 NIST cybersecurity framework can help your team to be in the best position possible to protect, detect, and respond to a ransomware attack on your organization. The most important thing to take away from this is that you're not simply covered by Google and or Microsoft. It is not their responsibility to protect your data or access to it. Ransomware in the cloud isn't going to go away. Your best approach is to put the cloud protections you need in place now. The cloud hosts a goldmine of data, and not just for the enterprises trying to turn their data into actionable insights or sell information. Cyber criminals have taken note of the amount of data pouring into the cloud and realize it represents a valuable target. Cloud computing vendors provide services for companies and individuals throughout the globe, and not just simple software as a service offerings. Many companies shift their entire databases to the cloud, often using database as a service. Some organizations shift entire infrastructure in the cloud, using infrastructure as a service. All of these services host valuable data required for business continuity, attracting the attention of threat actors. Cloud services are critical for business continuity. To be successful, a ransomware attacker must target workloads that are absolutely critical and irreplaceable. Otherwise, the owners will not be incentivized to pay the ransom. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, entire workplaces are shifting to work from home models. To provide employees with virtual workspaces, many prefer to do away with the traditional and slow virtual private networks, that's VPNs. Today, many IT teams prefer to use the virtual desktop infrastructure or VDIs for self-managing the deployment of virtual machines, or leverage managed desktop as a service offerings based in the cloud. All of these business-critical environments are fodder for threat actors. Cloud resources are shared by many. If threat actors manage to encrypt an entire server which is owned by a cloud vendor and sourced to many cloud users, then they increase the amount of ransom they can get from just one attack. All of the cloud users sharing the same server's resources are then forced to pay the ransom, and the profit to the threat actor multiplies. Ransomware attacks target firms of all sizes. 5% or more of businesses in the top 10 industry sectors have been attacked, and no size business, from small and medium-sized businesses to enterprises, is immune. Attacks are on the rise in every sector and in every size of business. Also, the phishing attempt that targeted the World Health Organization, though unsuccessful, proves that attackers show no sense of out-of-bounds targets when it comes to choosing their victims. These attempts indicate that organizations, which often have weaker controls and out-of-date or unsophisticated IT systems, should take extra caution to protect themselves and their data. The US ranks the highest in the number of ransomware attacks, followed by Germany and then France. Windows computers are the main targets, but ransomware strains exist for Macintosh and Linux as well. The unfortunate truth is that ransomware has become so widespread that for most companies it is a certainty that they will be exposed to some degree to a ransomware or a malware attack. The best they can do is to be prepared and understand the best ways to minimize the impact of ransomware. Phishing emails, malicious email attachments, and visiting compromised websites have become common vehicles of infections. Weaknesses in Microsoft Server message block and remote desktop protocol have allowed cryptoworms to spread. Desktop applications, in one case an accounting package, and even Microsoft Office, Microsoft Dynamic Data Exchange, DDE, have been the agents of infection. Recent ransomware strains such as Petya, CryptoLocker, and WannaCry have incorporated worms to spread themselves across networks, earning the nickname cryptoworms. According to recent research, it's estimated that the cost of ransomware will top $20 billion in 2021. These costs usually include a ransom fee, forensics, legal work, fines and penalties, and data recovery requirements. In 2020, 73% of ransomware attacks were successful, which was an increase of 600% over the previous year. And every 11 seconds, a new organization falls victim to ransomware. Today, average downtime from a ransomware attack is 16 days. And as an example, healthcare organizations pay out more than $8,851 per minute of downtime. There is no last line of defense. The reality is that ransomware has become a multi-billion-dollar industry for cyber criminals. Like any other successful businesses, ransomware schemes want to show positive revenue traction year over year. Today, ransomware is a real threat to individuals and businesses. In 2020, ransomware targeted more narrow groups of victims to extract higher ransom payments. For example, according to a recent Emisoft report, at least 2,354 U.S. governments, healthcare facilities, and schools were impacted in 2020. There is no indication that ransomware is going away anytime soon. Ransomware tactics are becoming more focused and sophisticated. Attackers have discovered that businesses and critical service providers are often more likely to pay large ransom amounts to end debilitating business interruptions than individuals. Most of today's organizations rely on data and information systems to carry out day-to-day operations. Denying access to critical data is on par with a critical disaster. While many organizations have disaster recovery plans, most don't include proper response to a permanent loss of critical operational data. It's important to understand how the cloud ransomware threat is different from most other threats to avoid facing devastating disruptions to critical business functions. A large percentage of malware is known to deliver ransomware, and more than half of malware-infected files are shared publicly. The most common types of cloud malware include JavaScript exploits and droppers, Microsoft Office macros, PDF exploits, Linux malware, and backdoors. If a hacker manages to gain access to a cloud service provider successfully, they can essentially launch a ransomware attack that can affect every customer. Ransomware called Cerber targets Office 365 users via malicious macros in Office documents attached on spam emails. While Office 365 automatically disables macros to prevent malware from entering the system, Cerber uses social engineering to trick the user into bypassing this security feature. While many cloud services offer the option to recover a previous version of file, this does not mean that they are safe from ransomware. If a user has the opportunity to delete these previous versions, so does the malware. The cloud can also spread malware to other users through the sharing of infected files and automatic syncing. For example, Warlock ransomware specifically targets cloud storage and collaboration platforms, allowing it to replicate rapidly through the whole network from a single infected user. Cloud applications including file sharing, collaboration, and social networks are becoming one of the most common ways of spreading malware. 1 out of every 10 companies have malware in their cloud storage facility. It is therefore vital that any company using the cloud for storage or collaboration invests in an automated daily backup and daily cloud apps auditing to detect and recover from malware attacks. However, these examples do not mean that using the cloud for backup and collaboration is riskier than confining all software to in-house. Most small to medium businesses do not have the resources to ensure state-of-the-art security for their data. In this case, relying on the more sophisticated security measures of enterprise cloud providers is both economical and provides enhanced data security. The prospect of permanently losing critical data is a real possibility for ransomware victims. The prevailing attitude is simply avoid becoming a victim. While that approach sounds good, it only works when it's 100% effective. The real question is, how can we recover if any of our preventative controls fail to stop a ransomware attack? The answer is to implement plans to prevent, assess, and recover. A good ransomware resilience plan implements multiple layers. Staying safe from ransomware isn't difficult with the right controls and plans in place. There will likely be some changes you must consider for your IT infrastructure. All attackers, and ransomware attackers specifically, depend on normal IT infrastructures. They expect to find lots of automation and easy connections to external storage. Surprising attackers with a smarter infrastructure are the first steps towards surviving a ransomware attack. I assume you're interested in finding out more about the threat of ransomware and how to keep it from disrupting your organization's business operations. I also assume you want to know more about the steps you need to take to build a solid ransomware recovery plan. There are 3 critical aspects that can expose cloud data to ransomware. Ransomware often reaches the cloud after first infecting a local computer. From the local machine, the ransomware infiltrates a file-sharing service synced to the cloud. The malicious process encrypts the file on the compromised machine and then spreads the corrupted files to the cloud. This type of attack can put a business network to great risk. Once the infection spreads to the cloud, it can compromise the organization's entire cloud sharing system. Then, the ransomware might spread across the network, infecting other connected machines. If the ransomware reaches files that have not been backed up, the company might be forced to pay the ransom. Here are the tips to help you protect your data against ransomware syncing. Use a next-generation antivirus capable of defending against ransomware to protect local files. Continuously update your operating system using the most recent security patches. Leverage web filtering services to block infected websites. Immediately disconnect infected devices and systems from internet networks. Get technical support from IT and security professionals. Implement backup and disaster recovery strategies using either first-party or third-party solutions. Ransom Cloud is a new spin on ransomware which targets cloud-based email services like Office 365. Threat actors use phishing emails to gain access to email accounts. Phishing emails look like legitimate emails, tricking victims into clicking on files that corrupt their systems or provide attackers with access to the account. Once attackers gain access to the email account, they can use ransomware to encrypt the email messages of the victim and demand a ransom. Additionally, threat actors often use email accounts to launch new attacks, impersonate the account owner, scam the family members of the owner, and spread malware to the victim's contacts. Here are a few tips to protect your data against ransom cloud attack. Employee training. There are often signs that might warn against a phishing attack. Training and updated educational resources can help ensure employees of all levels know how to identify, avoid, and report phishing schemes. Establish email backup and disaster recovery strategies which ensure your data remains available even during attacks. To increase the profitability of each attack, threat actors often directly target cloud vendors, trying to exploit vulnerabilities to penetrate larger scope of systems. They can then demand ransom payments from many victims. Here are a few tips to help you protect your data against ransomware targeting cloud vendors. Demand transparency. Service providers often have their own ransomware recovery plans. Ask your provider to provide their plan to assess the vendor's ability to respond during major disasters, including ransomware attacks. Plan for an outage. To ensure business continuity, you should have a plan of your own that outlines how to continue operations during vendor outages. For example, you can leverage more than one vendor, or maybe use a multi-cloud strategy to ensure that you have somewhere to fall back to during outages. You can also establish a hybrid cloud strategy using on-prem resources during failures or leverage a third-party recovery solution. Several trends in ransomware have emerged, and none of them is good. Your goal as a steward of your organization's data is to understand threat trends and prepare for potential future attacks. The good news is that in spite of how sophisticated ransomware has become, it's still possible to stay a few steps ahead of the attackers. By now, most organizations are acutely aware of the risk associated with ransomware. But over the past year, as the pandemic has driven growth in the remote workforce, software as a service or SaaS platforms and services have become increasingly critical for business success and increasingly become a target for cybercriminals. As these threats continue to evolve, organizations are facing what's referred to as cloud ransomware. This new generation of ransomware attacks is designed explicitly to spread through the cloud and encrypt SaaS data associated with cloud services. Some of the current trends in ransomware attacks are increasing ransom amounts. Attackers focus their attacks on fewer targets but demand much higher ransom payments. Emerging commodity malware. You don't have to write malware to use ransomware. Ransomware as a service or RAS vendors make it easy to become a ransomware attacker. Targeting remote work and study situations. Increasing work and study from home activities accelerated by COVID-19 restrictions has resulted in attackers focusing on collaboration and education providers. Exfiltrating data. In addition to simply encrypting data, some attacks are now transporting data to the attacker's site. After an attacker has a victim's data, that data could be sold for profit or leaked to cause reputational harm or result in legal or regulation violation fines such as GDPR sanctions. Taking a second pass at extortion. Exfiltrated data is being used to extort additional ransom payment to avoid releasing sensitive data. Just the threat of releasing sensitive data could be enough to force a victim to pay a ransom. Searching out and compromising backups. Many current ransomware variants don't just stop at encrypting local data. They search for any connected data sources and attempt to encrypt all backup copies as well. Continuing rapid growth. The increased ransom, ease of malware access, and better targeting of victims all result in a growing number of players in the ransomware attacker space looking for profit. Will ransomware infect cloud storage? Absolutely. You need to build out a strategy to prevent that from happening. But at the same time, you need to expect that it will and have a recovery strategy as well. Surviving in the era of frequent malware attacks is only possible through a combination of avoiding most attacks and recovering from the rest. Although you must have a robust plan in place to handle successful attacks, the best scenario is when you can avoid the attack altogether. The key to handling any ransomware attack is to first understand the nature of the attack and then take measures to prevent the attack, and finally to deal with any attacks that are successful. In the unfortunate event that you've been attacked by a ransomware, what should you do next? You can begin with isolate the infection. The rate and speed of ransomware detection is critical in combating fast-moving attacks before they succeed in spreading across networks and encrypting vital data. The first thing to do when a computer is suspected of being infected is to isolate it from other computers and storage devices. Disconnect it from the network, both wired and Wi-Fi, and from any external storage devices. Cryptoworms actively seek out connections and other computers, so you may want to prevent that from happening. You also don't want the ransomware communicating across the network with its command and control center. Be aware that there may be more than just one patient zero, meaning that the ransomware may have entered your organization or home through multiple computers or may be dormant and not yet shown itself on some systems. Treat all connected and networked computers with suspicion and apply measures to ensure that all systems are not infected. Identify the infection. Identifying the ransomware will help you understand what type of ransomware you have, how it propagates, and what type of files it encrypts, and maybe what your options are for removal and disinfection. It will also enable you to report the attack to authorities, which is recommended. So that brings us to the next point, that's report. You'll be doing everyone a favor by reporting all ransomware attacks to the authorities. The FBI urges ransomware victims to report ransomware incidents regardless of the outcome. Victim reporting provides law enforcement with a greater understanding of the threat, provides justification for ransomware investigations, and contributes relevant information to ongoing ransomware cases. Knowing more about victims and their experiences with ransomware will help the FBI to determine who is behind the attacks and how they are identifying or targeting victims. You can file a report with the FBI and the Internet Crime Complaint Center. There are also other ways to report ransomware as well. Next, determine your options. Your options when infected with ransomware are to pay the ransom or to try to remove the malware and to wipe out the systems and reinstall from scratch. It's generally considered a bad idea to pay the ransom. Paying the ransom encourages more ransomware, and in many cases, the unlocking of the encrypted files is not successful. In a recent survey, more than 3/4 of respondents said their organization is not likely to pay the ransom in order to recover the data. That's about 77%. Only a small minority said they are willing to pay some ransom. That's around 3% of companies have already set up Bitcoin account in preparation. Even if you decide to pay, it's possible you won't get back your data. That leaves two other options: removing the malware and selecting restoring your system, or wiping out everything and reinstalling from scratch. Next, you can restore and refresh. System restores are not the best strategy for dealing with ransomware and malware. You might be tempted to use a system restore point to get your system back up and running. System restore is not a good solution for removing viruses or other malware. Since malicious software is typically buried with all kinds of places on a system, you can't rely on system restore being able to root out all parts of the malware. Also, system restore does not save old copies of your personal files as part of its snapshot. It also will not delete or replace any of your personal files when you perform a restoration. So don't count on system restore as working like a backup. You should always have a good backup procedure in place for all your personal files. Local backups can also be encrypted by ransomware. If your backup solution is local and connected to a computer and gets hit with ransomware, the chances are good your backups will be encrypted along with the rest of your data. With a good backup solution that is isolated from your local computers, you can easily obtain the files you need to get your system working again. You have the flexibility to determine which files to restore, from which date you want to restore, and how to obtain the files you need to restore your system. And last but not the least, you can plan to prevent recurrence. Make an assessment of how the infection occurred and what you can do or what measures you can put in place to prevent it from happening again. Training users to avoid becoming a victim. One of the best investments any organization can make to avoid ransomware is end-user training. Users provide nearly all the entry points for a successful ransomware attack and play a vital role in stopping attacks before they start. Training users to recognize potential attacks and resist the temptation to click questionable links can result in a much lower probability of attack success. Security is everyone's responsibility, not just a small group of security specialists. Recognizing suspicious content is a good start, but users need to also know what to do next. For email messages, users should forward everything that looks suspicious or odd to a specific email address. Your security personnel should monitor that email address and examine any reported messages. One consistent characteristic of successful security awareness program is their ongoing nature. Instead of only offering security awareness training once, you should require recurrent periodic training. Once your personnel understand how ransomware works, they are more likely to accept guidelines for online behavior. Users can do or avoid many things that make the IT environment safer and less prone to ransomware attacks. Hardening the IT environment. IT and security personnel also have best practices. Implementing the following best practices help provide and maintain a more secure environment to your users. Identify all critical data. Create a periodic backup copies of all critical data. Develop and test a comprehensive recovery plan. Update all computers and devices with the latest security patches. Require antivirus or anti-malware software on all computers and devices. Implement malware scanning and filtering on mail servers. Implement firewalls with restrictive rule sets at each trust boundary. Require a virtual private network for all remote access. Establish, publicize, and staff a support function to investigate a reported suspicious messages or websites. While no amount of prevention is 100% effective, every little bit counts. Every ransomware attack you prevent is one which you don't have to recover from. The best strategy is to prevent every attack that you can and prepare to recover from any attack that is successful. Once you've detected an attack, stopped the damage, and identified what files have been affected, it's time to trigger your recovery plan. A good recovery plan makes getting back to normal operation as quick and painless as possible. Precision and speed are the key to a fast and reliable recovery. The key to recovering from a ransomware attack is having the flexibility to recover files in a granular fashion. Granular recovery means that you can fetch copies of the files affected by the attack before the ransomware encrypted them, without having to restore all backed up files. Once you know which files you need to recover, the rest of the plan is executing the steps to recover those files. A good backup strategy is the foundation of ransomware recovery, but the plan doesn't stop there. Backups you can trust and use to recover from a ransomware attack must guarantee immutability and provide easy access to authorized individuals. Create a plan that provides detailed and simple procedures for recovering a list of files. The plan should provide guidance for developing the recovery actions and estimating the time required for recovery. Every recovery plan should include guidelines for methods and frequencies of testing the plan. Never trust an untested plan. Tests should be recurring and of different intensity levels, from simple read-throughs up to a full failure recovery. An important business requirement of any recovery plan is meeting the organization's recovery time objective, that is RTO. Your recovery plan must restore the organization to a recovery point objective, that is RPO, within the RTO. The RPO defines what conditions you must meet to restore and continue normal operation. Put another way, your recovery plan must restore operations as defined by the RPO and do it before the RTO time elapses. A heavy-handed approach to ransomware attack recovery could add additional damage to the attack. You only need to recover the files encrypted by the ransomware. So why restore anything else? Normal day-to-day business functions routinely change data. Many of these changes are coordinated across multiple files, databases, or even computers. Any operation that overrides data changes by restoring an earlier version of data effectively undoes changes. If you restore files that weren't affected by a ransomware attack, you may lose transactions or even get out of sync with other systems. Another approach to detecting malicious behavior is to use machine learning algorithms. Machine learning algorithms compare normal behavior and file system state to current behavior. Machine learning algorithms are very good at learning what normal looks like and flagging any behavior that looks abnormal. Machine learning algorithms can look at running processes and the resources they are using, as well as unusual changes to the file system. After learning about ransomware, it may seem that surviving an attack is a daunting task. However, once you understand the attacks, how to avoid them, and how to recover from them, planning to confront ransomware can be a straightforward project. This list gives you 10 tips to putting together a plan to not only survive but thrive in the face of a ransomware attack. Train users to avoid ransomware attacks. Train all users on how to recognize common ransomware attacks and how to avoid becoming a victim. Provide a method for users to report suspicious messages or websites and train users how to report anything suspicious. Turn on mail server filtering. Today, mail servers either include options or support add-ons to filter mail messages and attachments for suspicious content. Identify critical files. Take inventory of your organization's critical business functions and the data each one needs to operate. Create a manifest of files that are critical to your organization staying in business. This list of files should be the focus of your protection and recovery efforts. Choose the right backup service provider. Choose a backup service provider that can guarantee immutable backups and easy access to unencrypted files via flexible but secure APIs. Backup critical files to an immutable destination. Frequently backup all files on your critical files manifest to a backup service provider that guarantees immutability, such as maybe Rubrik, to ensure ransomware can't encrypt your backups. Develop a plan to recover files. While backing up critical files is a great step, Develop a formal plan for recovering files if a recovery process is needed. Document the conditions under which you should recover, who will carry out the recovery operations, and how to identify what to recover and how to recover the identified files. Create automation templates for quick recovery. When you need to activate your plan, all you should need to provide is a list of files to recover. That means part of your plan should include script templates to carry out the recovery process for any list of files. Script templates give you the ability to test the recovery process many times and fine-tune the process operation. Test your plan frequently. In addition to testing individual scripts, it's important to test the entire recovery plan frequently. The only valid plan is one that meets your RPO and RTO requirements. Ensure all participating personnel are comfortable with their roles and the plan flow. Frequent tests to validate the plan's effectiveness in changing environments and keeps personnel fresh and ready to go. Monitor critical files for suspicious changes. Implement file integrity monitoring on production file system to detect suspicious changes, such as those consistent with ransomware. As an added layer of protection, implement similar monitoring for backup locations. Any unauthorized backup changes or unusual changes to previously backed up files should be noted. Ensure your backup service provider delivers alerts for suspicious backup changes. Train and deploy an incident response team. Assemble a team of personnel with the express purpose of responding to a suspected ransomware attack. The team should be fully versed in the recovery plan and be comfortable with their clearly defined roles. Each team member must ensure or participate in frequent tests to keep everyone ready to respond whenever the demand arises. Protecting against ransomware is a critical issue for all organizations, and these questions and best practices are only the start of building a mature and resilient cybersecurity posture. It's important to remember that you can't focus on a single piece of defense. You need a comprehensive cybersecurity program that enables you to identify, prevent, detect, respond, and recover from threats. Above all, you need a range of solutions from a battle-tested and highly resilient cloud platform that works across these elements in an integrated way with your business. I sincerely appreciate you attending this presentation and hope you enjoyed it as well as it was informative for you. I look forward for receiving any questions or comments that you may have. My contact details are on the next slide. So until next time, stay safe, be well, and goodbye.